They used my side yard as a shortcut to their house, wearing down my grass and leaving trash behind. When I asked them to stop, they snickered, "It's just a path." So I installed a tall privacy fence with a locked gate. The day they walked right into it and fell backward, they screamed, "You did this on purpose." I never thought a simple strip of grass could lead to such chaos. When I moved into my modest home in Springfield, Illinois, I was drawn to its charm and the promise of peaceful living. The house had a cozy front yard, a welcoming porch, and a side yard that, at first glance, seemed insignificant. Little did I know, that narrow strip of land would soon become the center of a neighborhood dispute. The side yard was a slender patch of lawn running alongside my house, separating my property from the Harrisons. Initially, I paid it little attention. But soon, I noticed a distinct path forming through it. The Harrisons had begun using my side yard as a shortcut to their backyard, saving themselves a few extra steps around the block. At first, I brushed it off. We all seek convenience, and if cutting through my yard made their lives easier, I could tolerate it. However, as weeks passed, the occasional shortcut became a daily routine. Not only were they wearing down my grass, but they also left behind litter, candy wrappers, soda cans, and once, even a used diaper. My patience began to wear thin. One evening, as I was tending to my garden, I decided to address the issue. I approached Mr. Harrison as he was making his usual trek through my yard. "Hey, Tom," I began, trying to keep my tone light. "I've noticed you and your family have been using my side yard to get to your place. The grass is getting pretty worn, and I've been finding some trash lately. Could you please use the sidewalk instead?" He paused, a smirk creeping onto his face. "It's just a path," he replied dismissively. "No harm done." I was taken aback by his nonchalant attitude. "Well, it's my property, and I'd appreciate it if you'd respect that." He chuckled, shaking his head as he continued on his way. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." Frustrated but not wanting to escalate the situation, I decided to let it go for the moment. However, the trespassing continued and the littering worsened. I even caught their teenage son hosting friends in my yard, leaving behind beer bottles and cigarette butts. It was clear that my polite requests were being ignored. Determined to reclaim my property, I decided to install a tall privacy fence along the side yard. I hired a local contractor, and within a week, a sturdy 6-foot wooden fence stood between our properties, complete with a locked gate for access on my terms. I hoped this would send a clear message. The day after the fence was completed, I was in my kitchen when I heard a loud thud followed by a yelp. Rushing outside, I found Mrs. Harrison sprawled on the ground, rubbing her forehead. She had walked straight into the new fence, not expecting it to be there. "You did this on purpose," she screeched, glaring up at me. I helped her to her feet, trying to suppress my own irritation. I installed a fence on my property to prevent further trespassing after my previous requests were ignored. She huffed, storming back to her house. I knew this wasn't the end of it. Sure enough, the Harrisons retaliated. They began hosting loud parties late into the night, with music blaring and guests parking haphazardly, sometimes even blocking my driveway. Trash from their gatherings often ended up in my yard. I documented each incident, taking photos and noting times. After several weeks of enduring their antics, I decided to involve the authorities. I presented my documentation to the local police, who issued them a warning. The Harrisons were furious, but the disturbances lessened. However, the tension remained. They would shoot me dirty looks whenever our paths crossed, and passive-aggressive comments became the norm. I realized that while I had reclaimed my property, I had lost the possibility of a cordial relationship with my neighbors. So after the fence went up and the police gave them a warning, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd let it go. They didn't. 2 days after the warning, I noticed my trash can tipped over, garbage spread across my driveway. At first, I thought maybe a raccoon got into it. But then I found a crumpled beer can tucked halfway under my car tire with the word "prick" scratched into it. I wasn't the kind of person to jump to conclusions, but come on, no one else in the neighborhood had beef with me. It didn't stop there. My mail started going missing. Packages would say "delivered," but never showed up. One of my security cameras caught their teenage kid, Josh, walking across my porch. He looked straight at the camera and flipped it off. I printed the picture and walked it over to their front door. Mrs. Harrison answered. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. He's a teenager, she snapped. Kids do dumb things. I held up the picture. Then maybe teach him not to steal. She slammed the door in my face. That night, I moved all my security cameras to face every angle of my yard. I upgraded my porch camera and installed motion sensor lights. I also bought a lockable mailbox. And still, I couldn't relax. Every creak of the house at night made me sit up in bed. I didn't feel safe anymore. In my own home. Then the spray paint happened. I woke up one morning, looked out my window, and saw giant red letters scrawled across my brand new fence. Path blocker. That word stuck with me. It was stupid and childish, but it cut deep. It told me exactly how petty they were willing to be. I called the cops again. They came out, took a report, but without footage of the act itself, they couldn't do much. Just keep documenting, the officer said. Build a case. I nodded, even though I felt like it was useless. These people weren't scared of rules or consequences. They thought they owned the whole damn street. But they made one mistake. They forgot my job. I work from home, yes, but not in a regular 9 to 5. I'm a GIS analyst. Basically, I map data for land use and property disputes. It's boring to most people, but I know zoning laws better than the people at City Hall. So I started digging. I pulled property lines, county permits, zoning documents. And what I found? Their pool? The one they bragged about all the time? Was 3 feet over the legal property line. That's right. Their precious backyard oasis was partially on my land. I could feel something inside me snap. They crossed the line. Now it was my turn. Once I confirmed the pool overlap, I didn't act right away. I wanted to be smart. I made copies of everything: survey maps, zoning codes, old permit filings. I checked and double-checked. Their in-ground pool and half their concrete patio were about 3 feet into my property. That little shortcut they used to take? Now it looked like the tip of a much bigger problem. I didn't go straight to the city. I wanted to be thorough. So I paid for a new, professional property survey. The surveyor came out, marked the exact lines, and put stakes down. Sure enough, bright orange flags poked through their bushes and lined up right along their precious pool deck. The next day, I noticed the flags were gone. I knew who did it. So I filed a formal complaint with the zoning office. Then I called a lawyer. At this point, my days were filled with paperwork and quiet fury, while theirs were full of shouting. I started hearing them arguing through the walls. Their teenage kid yelling. Mr. Harrison pacing in the backyard, talking loudly on his phone, cursing a lot. A week later, I got the knock on my door I was expecting. It was a city inspector, followed by a sweaty, red-faced Mr. Harrison. Sir, we received a complaint about a zoning encroachment, the inspector said calmly. Mind if we walk the line? We did. And when the inspector saw where their pool sat in relation to the property stakes, he nodded. This will have to be addressed. They'll have to apply for a variance or remove the encroachment. Mr. Harrison looked like he was about to explode. His face was turning a shade I hadn't seen on a human before. You petty, bitter, he started. The inspector cut him off. Sir, we're not here to argue. But I wasn't done. I had more cards to play. About a year before, the Harrisons had done some backyard work, leveling, new stone paths, added lighting. I knew for a fact they hadn't pulled permits for all of it. So I added those details to my complaint. The city opened a new case. Within a month, they were buried in notices, fines, and correction orders. It was beautiful. But then things took a darker turn. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard what I thought was a knock. When I opened my front door, no one was there, but my porch had been vandalized. Eggs, shaving cream, and a dead rat in a grocery bag. I took pictures, called the cops, filed the report. But no one saw anything. No cameras caught it. That same week, my tires were slashed. I didn't have proof, but I didn't need it. I knew who it was. So I made another move. I filed a civil claim for trespassing and damage to property, past and present. My lawyer was thorough. We included all the photos of litter, the destroyed grass, the spray paint, even the used diaper. Their response came in the form of a counterclaim. They tried to sue me for emotional distress caused by the fence. They really thought that would work. Their case got tossed. Mine didn't. Meanwhile, the city denied their pool variance. Their options were tear it out or pay $500 per day until it was removed. But they still didn't stop. One morning, I walked outside and saw a for sale sign in my yard. Yes, my yard. They had the audacity to put a fake for sale sign with my name on it. I ripped it out and walked it over to their porch, slammed it down, and said, "Next time you do this, I'm calling the sheriff." Mr. Harrison just sneered and said, "Maybe you should move. Nobody wants you here." But I smiled, because now they were the ones with fines, legal problems, and a pool they couldn't legally keep. They picked the wrong side yard to mess with. After the fake, for sale, sign incident, I started documenting everything. I carried a small body cam when I went outside. I backed up all my security footage on 2 drives. Every interaction, every slur, every threat, I kept it. Then, one day, I came home from running errands and found smoke in the air. My fence was on fire. Not fully engulfed, just the corner near their yard. It had been lit and died out, probably from bad kindling or panic. I called the fire department, then the cops. No one saw who did it. No prints. But it was clear this wasn't random. And that was it. That was the final straw. I gave the police everything: photos, video, previous reports, even the zoning complaints. They opened an investigation. But while they worked, I took things into my own hands, legally. I filed a full restraining order. I requested a court date for the property damage and harassment. I contacted a local reporter. And then I went to their HOA. Yeah, the Harrisons were violating 6 codes. Illegal modifications, disturbances, visual nuisances. I presented a full binder to the HOA board: photos, timelines, legal copies, everything. The next week, they got a thick envelope of HOA citations. And right after that, 2 things happened fast. 1, a city truck showed up with a pool demolition crew. They started tearing it out, section by section, in front of the whole neighborhood. 2, a for sale sign appeared. This time on their actual lawn. But before they could move, the court date for the restraining order came. I showed the judge everything. They denied, until my lawyer dropped video evidence of their son spray painting my fence at 2 a.m. and laughing about it on TikTok. He was dumb enough to post it with their address in the background. The restraining order was approved. They were ordered to pay fines, legal fees, and damages for the harassment and vandalism. Their house went on sale again, but now every buyer saw the busted backyard, half-removed pool, and HOA fines attached. They ended up selling at a $90,000 loss. And here's where it gets even darker. I found out later, from a real estate agent in town, that their credit took a huge hit from all the unpaid fines. They moved 2 towns over into a much smaller rental. No more backyard paradise. No more smug walks through someone else's property. But I'll admit something here. Something ugly. I didn't have to take it as far as I did. I could have stopped after the fence. I could have ignored the dumb sign. Maybe I didn't need to call the HOA or the reporter. Maybe I got a little taste of revenge and wanted the whole buffet. Because here's the truth. I won, but I also changed. I used to be the quiet neighbor. The live and let live guy. Now I check my cameras every night. I walk with my head on a swivel. And sometimes, when I see my reflection in the window, I don't recognize the person who was so ready to burn it all down over a shortcut. But they started it. They made it ugly. And I just finished it. Would I do it again? Probably. Because no one disrespects my home. Not anymore.